If you're a photographer or a designer looking to print a book featuring black and white monochrome images, then this is a crucial video for you to watch, enjoy, digest, and act on. From the start, we'll be very clear that it is very hard to effectively print black and white images in digital print. And if your book is 700 copies or less, we will print it using our digital machine, which is the top of the range HP Indigo press. However, this isn't our first rodeo. Years and years of experience have proven to us that even that setup is not adequate enough to produce black and white images to a high level without a partnership and some care and attention beforehand. This is an issue you will face at every printer, but at Ex Why Zed, we are keen to point it out before your job goes ahead to print. Admittedly, this is a far from ideal state of affairs, but we've gone through this enough times now to know that being honest from the outset is the best route. Hence this video. So let's take a deep dive into why this is so difficult. There are two ways to print your monochrome images. Ultimately, if you have taken a shot that looks black and white on screen, there is an extremely high likelihood that it is actually a colour image. It will come from your SLR or digital device as an RGB image, which at one stage needs to be converted to CMYK before printing. Look at this image here. It appears black and white on screen. Then when we hover over it in Acrobat's output preview, we can see it's actually CMYK. There is content in all 4 channels. So visually it is black and white, but in reality it is a colour image. Moving into Photoshop with the colour picker and choosing a mid-grey pixel on the ice here, you can see there is actually 62% cyan making up the image, 53% magenta, 51% yellow and 49% black. So to render the image on screen, your camera or your initial input is actually making up those pixels from cyan, magenta, yellow, as well as black. Let's pick out a lighter shade pixel from the sky. This one is even more pronounced and with far more cyan, yellow and magenta than there is black. Conversely, on darker shades, it is less of an issue. Here we actually have more black in the pixel than the colours. Going back to the mid-grey pixel, if you were to send that file to print, when our ink goes down on the sheet, we're going to be printing this particular pixel with 62% cyan, 54 magenta, 52 yellow and 53 black. So I would fully expect it to appear slightly green or blue because of that amount of cyan. This isn't a print mistake. This is not a print mistake. It is how the image has been set up. That is crucial to note. We won't make any changes to the images you send over, and we definitely won't add more green or blue. That would be completely counterintuitive. We take pride in the work we produce. We simply print the image that you send, and the colour set up on that image prints blue or green because there is more cyan than there is black. We know from experience that doesn't represent your images in their best light. Frankly, it's going to look rubbish. So a while back we stopped printing images like this and we asked for all similar ones to be converted to grayscale beforehand. The workflow for this is that you open up the raw JPEG, TIFF or your input file in Photoshop, go to the image menu, then mode and grayscale. Following the conversion, you can take a look at how it appears visually versus the original by using the history menu and toggling between the two. The chances are some of the shades and tones will be lost because you don't have that layer of 4 colours combining to make up the more subtle tones. The image might be more muted and the contrast and finer details less pronounced. Although going back to the checks that we'd completed earlier, what we have seen is that the likelihood of the difference in screen and print is far higher on lighter shades of grey than it is on darker ones. If you do feel that the image looks flatter after conversion, you can open up the brightness, contrast and level menus to toggle the settings, boost the image and achieve a better result. This process will become more streamlined after a few attempts. A little bit of experimentation here will get you a desired, bolder and richer result. You can use the level menus to make wide-ranging changes to the appearance of the image, making it super bright or super moody. So the method again, convert to grayscale, then adjust the brightness, contrast and levels, then resave as a max quality JPEG and drop the image into your InDesign file to continue laying out the pages. If we now open this JPEG image in Acrobat, you'll notice there is now no content in the cyan, magenta or yellow channels. All of the pixels are in the black channel, so when we print it, we'll only be using black ink to render the image. Our celebrity pixel from the ice is now 80% black. It won't have any colour tinge because we are only using black ink to print it. The flip side of this is that you don't have the richness of ink making up the shades, so the image tends to look flatter on paper than it does on screen. This is completely unavoidable, but as we have shown, it can be alleviated in Photoshop with some tweaks after the conversion. Again, this isn't a print issue. We haven't flattened the PDFs, printed them with the ink cartridge only half full, or made any ad hoc changes to deliberately ruin the job. Interestingly, this was a publication called Monochrome Monday for social media channel Vero, and they decided to print the images in colour, contradicting not only our advice, but the title of the very publication itself. So here is the image in print, which we've been examining. It does have a slight green tinge towards the top and maybe even a warmth about the lower half. Thankfully, they were actually overjoyed with the books and really loved them. Let's take a look at some other recent books we've printed. In Cinem, there is a mix of colour and black and white images, but this one in particular has a green tinge on the clothing label. Momo is entirely black and white images, but as we've mentioned, they chose to go ahead in colour without converting to grayscale. The images are tactile onto uncoated paper, but some do lean towards red and others towards green. Next up is Fine Dining, which has a series of images that are all converted, and when printed onto silk with a tweak to the contrast levels, they retain a sharpness and jet black quality on the dark areas. Unseen features grayscale images too, and it's quite stark to see how much these soak into uncoated paper, far more evidently than Fine Dining onto silk. The print quality is more subtle and softer with no sheen. It does suit the nature photography more than the sharper edges on the coated paper. There is no right or wrong answer for which finish to choose. It does come down to your personal preference. Moving on, we take a look at Still More Immense, which again was the result of a collaboration to ensure the images had been converted to grayscale before being printed onto 170 GSM silk. The blacks are deep and the detail within the images comes across well. For a different aesthetic, Camera Forward has uncoated papers and images which are more charcoal than black, so do look faded and retro in print. A perfect example of a photography book is The 100 by street photographer Tom Lee. The cover and inside pages are both onto gloss, 300 GSM for the cover, 170 GSM for the insides. Gloss gives the images a shine and dynamism, which gives a depth more similar to a screen reproduction. Finally, two last examples, Tiffany Roubert's photography zine, where the cover is intentionally in colour and has a slight blueness. The CMYK settings are in the mid-range with 50% cyan, 35 magenta and yellow, and only 5% black. Content is key here, however, and it is a much-loved publication. The last zine is an example of black text and a montage page where the tone and shades are less of an issue because of the vector shapes. CMYK versus grayscale is far more of a concern on photographic work than it is on illustrations, typography or vectors. This section should give a good insight into the reality of printing in colour versus black ink only, and how the finish of the paper really affects the sharpness and clarity. Images will look flatter on uncoated because the ink soaks into the paper. For crisper images, choose silk or gloss. Let's take a look at some A3 test sheets we printed recently to further highlight the situation. Here we have an image which was supplied to us in CMYK colour, and we've repeated that across the sheet 4 times with slightly different treatments. Just to note, all commercial printers print in CMYK. The top left version was sent to the digital machine as the raw image. Next on the top row is an image we have converted in Photoshop, taking out -2 on the green channel and adding +6 on the red channel to warm it up. Bottom left we have added +8 on the red channel, -2 on the green and -4 on the blue to really try and reduce the chances of it printing green or blue. The bottom right hand attempt has been converted to grayscale. There is a difference between each. We'll leave it to you to decide which you prefer. Our thoughts? From a true grayscale perspective, bottom right is the obvious winner, but compared against the raw file top left, it does lack depth and tones. I think the grayscale version could have been boosted by having the contrast lifted in Photoshop by a few clicks to bring the blacks up, because it is quite light. Each of the other 3 images have pros and cons. It could be argued that the top right is the best of the 3 colour selections and has a bit of warmth and has reproduced slightly towards red and brown, giving a subtle sepia feel. Taking out -2 green and adding +6 red has definitely taken away the coldness of the image. We then printed these same images on gloss, uncoated and silk. Gloss on the left, uncoated in the middle and silk on the right. As expected, the silk and gloss are slightly sharper and the uncoated softer. The uncoated is warmer, with the silk and gloss reproducing more in the cold gamut. Remember, the same file was used for all of these tests. Taking the experiment further, we then printed the A3s on our second Indigo machine. Both presses were calibrated just before printing. Both are the top of the range digital machines using the same paper and ink. The second set printed a few clicks darker than the first. So what we're doing here is going to great lengths to highlight that despite aiming for complete control over every aspect of the print job, little idiosyncrasies exist even between 2 machines that sit next to each other. It makes it nigh on impossible to print the same image identically when the 2 sheets are not printed at the same time with the exact same setup. Every press will be different depending on model and age. Our calibration is tested and set by the press minder to industry standard levels that achieve the best breakdown for that press, because they will be unique to that particular machine. This issue is also prevalent if we've printed your job, then you ask for a reprint months or even years later. Realistically, even with a press minder standing next to the machine and scrutinising every sheet and every pixel, we would still expect some shift in the colour reproduction. However, the only person who will ever see both versions of the book simultaneously is you, the author. If the images are slightly warmer, darker or more magenta, then it will not put off a potential reader from buying it. Your enjoyable creative content is still the hero. This is a pragmatic approach, but the truth. So how do we get around this? Well, there needs to be an acceptance that the printed pages won't match your screen. The book is an indication of your images. People can see the original raw image on your website or in an exhibition, so the book serves as an accompanying memento. If that isn't an acceptable answer, then I guess it's best if we switch to full colour images all the way through the book. We will stress again that if the book arrives looking flat or slightly coloured, even though the images are meant to be black and white, we haven't done that to ruin your work, and it isn't a print error. We could print the book another 50 times and the same thing would happen again. We are very much covering our backs here and managing expectations, but I hope we've shown that despite having the best equipment, 100% accuracy isn't always possible. Having this understanding gives you a depth of information and an appreciation of the processes involved before you decide which images to include in your book. To wrap up, we print photo books, children's books, zines and catalogues all day, every day. We have over 400 great reviews on Trustpilot, and our ethos at Ex Why Zed continues to be that we print work that brings a smile to your face when the boxes arrive and you've seen your idea being transformed into print.